nightmarish, fever dream. Though this or any description would seem inadequate, it is the closest we get to a spoken definition of the hell that once ran rampant within the state of Louisiana. A time and place where a quick death by mauling, stabbing, or a self-inflicted gunshot to the head was the best possible outcome for any living soul standing in the wake of the sculptor's relentless corruption. For those unfortunate enough to remain among the living, still present in the state of Louisiana, eternal damnation awaited, as these poor souls would inevitably be forced into servitude of this malignant entity that had brought with it its corruption and the deepest parts of hell itself. The rapture had finally descended upon humanity. As the dead rose to consume the living, creatures and monsters vile enough to drive fear into the heart of the bravest of men turned our heroes to cowards, and humanity was slowly engulfed in darkness. Yet in the wake of mankind's darkest hour, one man remained resolute, a man who was certain that if this infection wasn't stifled in its infancy, its grasp around the throat of our realm would strangle the life out of humanity. Calculative, cold-hearted, and relentless, he was a man who understood that to save mankind, we wouldn't need to do the right thing. We would have to do whatever it would take. William Hardin, sheriff, enforcer, lawman of the city of New Orleans. Though his past remains shrouded, a mystery to most, bits and pieces can be discovered throughout history, unveiling brief and fleeting moments of his life. Though it is uncertain who approached who, Hardin was taken into the American Hunters Association, the AHA, under the supervision of the superintendent, Dr. Huff Jones. The secretive organization that existed in the shadows of society had for hundreds of years protected mankind by fighting off the unknown, the paranormal, and the otherworldly. Why it was Hardin who was recruited by the organization and not the more experienced and influential Marshal Phoebe Brewer is unknown, but one can't help but speculate if the reason might lie within the rumors of Hardin framing a man for the murder of the former sheriff only to take his place. It could be speculated that on the basis of this rumor, Huff deemed that Hardin might have a more suitable moral compass. It is said that in the early days of the corruption's outbreak, Hardin was recruited by a woman who went by the name of Lynch. Motivated to destroy this corruption, she had already acquired a reputation in Louisiana as a person who had a formidable understanding of the other side. She would take Hardin under her wing and teach him the basics, what the other side was, the dangers it brought with it, why to burn the bodies of those they encountered and killed within the dead zone, but most importantly, the creation of the inoculum, a potion which when ingested would protect the body and mind from the corrupting effects of the other side. The two would together roam the bayous, closing rift after rift, hunting the now walking dead, doing their best to grind this infection to a halt, both seemingly sharing the same interest in ridding the world of this disease. Yet their efforts seemed to be in vain, for what began as the dead coming back to life, this infection, just like a cancer, was growing, spreading, changing. And it seemed that with every passing day, The evil that came from the pits of hell itself would bring with it new, unspeakable horrors to the swamps of Louisiana. The testimony of a young girl, the account of a new abomination spreading terror and plague among the poor population within the swamps, reached Lynch and Hardin. Upon tracking down this entity, they came upon the broken and shattered body of a woman stumbling through the tall grass, stuck in ceaseless agony, her screams never fading, not even for a second. Her spine had been broken, and her ribcage exploded, shattered from within by a protruding hive structure, which contained an endless swarm of ferocious and infectious insects. The creature immediately turned on them, as it with a spine-chilling scream unleashed its massive venomous swarms that relentlessly pursued the both of them. The two fled as fast as they could, seeking shelter within an abandoned bunkhouse. The endless armies of bees, hornets, and flies hammered themselves against the ceiling, boards, and windows. Hardin sealed off the weak points of the building as best as he could, yet the swarm had engulfed the entire property, leaving no chance of escape. Lynch ventured further into the house, and that was by all accounts the last time that Hardin saw her. Assuming Lynch to be dead, Hardin would spend a week alone in the bunkhouse, trapped by the relentless swarm, before he could finally make his escape. As he returned to the AHA, he would become an integral part of organizing expeditions into the bayous with the sole purpose of eradicating the corruption. He was then approached by a man who went by the name Jack Marwick, as well as a woman, one Candice Ree. The two were determined to help Hardin in his investigation and fight against the corruption, yet the reputation that followed Jack Marwick was not one Hardin could confide in, and he kept the two private investigators well at arm's reach, certain that he didn't need their help. Instead, the teachings of Lynch would serve him well, as he not only had a direct understanding of how the other side operated, but also on how to safeguard oneself from its effect and how to combat it. Unfortunately, while Hardin possessed the knowledge, the know-how, and the will, the AHA sorely lacked capable hands to commit to the task. But Hardin then thought of an alternative solution. With the many prisons of the Louisiana state packed to the brim with useless, low-life degenerates, Hardin saw no reason why these people couldn't contribute to the cause. An almost endless pile of disposable lesser humans. He would show them the ropes, and they would lay down their lives for humanity if necessary. At least then, their worthless lives would have contributed something to mankind. Hardin began doing rounds to the different prisons. He would impose simple physical screenings, testing the prisoners' capabilities of running and lifting, as well as making sure that they were in decent enough health to embark on expeditions. If deemed fit for service, he would present the prisoners with an offer: their freedom under his employment, no questions asked. The smart ones turned him down. However, many of them would accept his offer. Taken away from the regular prisoners, the ones who had accepted Hardin's offer were moved into the yard, where they were met by chalked ritualistic markings in strange and concentric fashion on the ground. One by one, they were forced to walk in circles around the markings, over and over, reciting an oath given to them by Hardin. At the end of the ritual, they were given a brackish red liquid and forced to swallow it, a taste of what was described to be like nails. Then only one more task remained. Hardin needed to know, were they obedient and were they capable of murder? In front of each of them, an unknown prisoner would be put on their knees. They were then given a gun and told to execute the person in front of them. Once again, no questions asked. If they complied, they gained their freedom and became his deputies. If not, well, Hardin could always find more prisoners. These new recruits would then be forced onto expeditions within the bayous. Nothing could prepare these men for the horrors they were about to meet. However, despite the prisoners' disposition against the corruption, Hardin remained optimistic, hoping that his new deputies could help stifle the spread of this disease before it reached New Orleans. Yet, it turned out that many of these prisoners had other ideas. Of the ones that weren't killed by the creatures of darkness, others turned violent, criminal, disregarding their given tasks, only to murder others for money. Some ran, others disappeared. Either way, despite having recruited several men he knew he could trust, having to repeatedly hunt down his own deputies to either kill or arrest them for insubordination quickly proved to be too much of a hassle. Hardin needed another solution, something more manageable. Children, orphans, scared, clueless, obedient. The perfect solution. Now, instead of prisons, Hardin would make his rounds around the orphanages of Louisiana, treating these abandoned children the same way he did the prisoners. Physical screenings, completion of the ritual, and through this, Hardin would manage to amass an incomprehensible number of children, certain that he was about to send them to their death, yet determined to do what was necessary to fight this otherworldly infection. And then, just like the prisoners, the children went into the bayous, never knowing what nightmares they were about to encounter. Hardin promised rewards for those who brought back trophies, proof of kills, yet armed with rifles they had never before fired in their lives. The children never stood a chance as they faced the jaws and claws of the creatures from the other side. It was a slaughter. The cries and screams from within the swamps wouldn't seem to end. Hardin was surprised by how easily they died. After almost an hour, the screaming and shooting finally stopped. In the end, only 5 of the children made it back. 5 out of almost 200. To his surprise, those who had survived came back with trophies, proof to him that they had managed to kill several of these creatures of the corruption. Yet Hardin contemplated for a second. He didn't want the problem of feeding them, nor did he want to fear having to watch his back should any of these children potentially turn on him. So he racked his rifle and shot them dead. Hardin would continue his recruitment of children and push on in his attempts at fighting the other side. Yet despite having killed an untold amount of the corruption's creatures, the struggle would only grow more and more difficult, and Hardin found himself sliding into a grimmer and grimmer mood. Still, things were about to take a turn for the worse. During the transport of orphans, one of his loyal deputies by the name of Russell Snakeskin Chambers saved Hardin from a would-be assassin at a train station by shooting the man dead before he had a chance to shoot Hardin. On the man's person, they found a letter entailing his mission, It was signed by none other than Dr. Huff Jones. Why the two had a falling out is unknown, yet it is certain that Huff's threat to Sheriff Hardin's life wouldn't last for long, as the superintendent was assassinated in his own quarters, effectively putting an end to Hardin constantly having to look over his shoulder. However, the death of the superintendent would cause a power vacuum within the AHA that caused the organization to crumble from within, and Hardin's former influence through Huff's political contacts were now gone. After the fall of the AHA, Hardin would break off into his own faction, dedicated to continue the eradication of the corruption within Louisiana. He was followed by only his most trusted of deputies, most of which who seemed willing to take the blame for him should he ever be confronted of his actions by any government entity. However, despite his destiny being left solely to speculation, assumption can be made that not only did he contribute immensely to the cause and helped safeguard the realm of mankind during the early stages of the corruption, but in the end, he might also have made it out alive. Yet scarred and broken, weighed down by the inhumanity of his decisions that would haunt him until his very last day. Hey there, Hazmat here. That concludes the story of Sheriff Hardin, who isn't just one of my favorite characters within the lore of the game, but also one of my favorite legendary hunters to play as within the game. As always, a big thanks goes out to the Hunters Lounge, specifically the exclusive Gitchy Boy, the exclusive Johnny Sevens, the VIPs, Corvo Bearslayer, Derivative, Doc Powell, Gino Lucero, Goose, Hambone, Jimenel Bob, Corey Peterson, Michael Thornhill, Mordiv Menace, Ryan, Slip, Stas Piestek, Sunrise Phoenix, TJ Crane, Texas Toast, and the Wizard of Copper. And of course, all the regulars. The Hunters Lounge does not only support me directly as a content creator, they also help me decide on future content, and you can join it on Patreon or here on YouTube for as little as $1 a month. Link is in the description below. And thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next one.